Hello and a very, very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you're checking in from. Thank you so much for joining us back again in today's ADSelfService Plus workshop series. Today is day 2 of this workshop series, and I am Sharda Murthy. I'm a product expert in knowledge in ADSelfService Plus, and I'm going to be your presenter for the day. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Before I jump into today's session, I would like to do a very quick audio and video check. So if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you have no issues in viewing the screen, please drop in a yes message in the chat box provided. Awaiting a couple of confirmations before I can proceed further with today's session. Thank you so much. All right, I have about 15 confirmations so far. Perfect, thank you. So I believe the audio and video is okay. But once again, a very quick disclaimer. I'm working from the comfort of my home. So at any point of time you face any technical issues, please keep me notified by dropping a message in the chat console. I also want to very quickly remind you that this session is being recorded live. If you do have any questions that you'd like me to answer, please make use of the Q&A tab to drop in your questions. I will be able to take time to answer your questions during the session itself. And if time is a constraint, I promise to get back to you once we wrap up the agenda plan for the day. A couple of new folks have joined us today, so I want to once again extend a very, very warm welcome and wishing you all a very happy new year. Thank you so much for being part. Thank you so much for taking time in being part of today's session. That said, this ADSelfService Plus online workshop series is going to help you empower your workforce and secure access to resources with password self-service, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on. All right, I hope the audio and video are still okay and there's no issues with the broadcast. I just got a notification about my bandwidth, but yes, I trust you to drop me a message in case there are any technical issues. That said, in today's session, I am going to walk you through implementing multi-factor authentication for endpoints and the importance of password security. I'm going to walk you through some best practices for the day, and the agenda is on your screen. Once again, a very, very informative session. It is one of my favorite modules of ADSelfService Plus, because here we will be talking about how things look from an end user's perspective. So a very quick recap of all that we saw yesterday. I started by introducing you to ADSelfService Plus. I walked you through how you can allow users to take care of their own password resets and account unlocks as an administrator, what you need to do to seamlessly allow users to go through the password reset process, which is enabling multi-factor authentication. This can be granularly done based on OUs and groups present in your Active Directory across domains. And more importantly, different ways in which you can onboard users to sign up with these authenticators, how users can actually log in and sign up with different authenticators on notification, or how you as an administrator can import enrollment data from a CSV file, an external data source, or even choose to import data, even choose to force users to enroll with the help of a logon script. I also walked you through enrollment-free notification, which is email verification and SMS-based verification. And this is possible because of Active Directory attributes. And yes, that's pretty much all that we covered yesterday. We also explored the advantage of having password-based reporting in place, how you can audit users' password management actions, how you can keep track of enrollment reports, how you can keep track of users' password statuses, and also how you can send out notifications, password expiration notifications, to remind every single user on an organization level to reset their password well in advance. You can also choose to notify password expired users as well. So yesterday I promised that I will walk you through the end user perspective on all the configurations that we achieved yesterday, since we will be predominantly talking about multi-factor authentication, I am ready with different authenticators that we can work with across different endpoints, different checkpoints. With ADSelfService Plus, you can enable multi-factor authentication for Windows, Mac, and Linux systems, for numerous cloud applications, for your VPN, your RDP, your Outlook web access as well. Pardon me. And yes, you will also be able to make MFA seamless by allowing users to enable browser and device trust. Therefore, they're not, they do not have to go through frequent MFA prompts. I'm definitely going to talk about conditional access. Once again, one of my favorite modules within ADSelfService Plus, and something that comes in handy if you're going to work remotely, if your workforce is going to have a hybrid work culture or a remote work culture on the long run. Once again, pretty much everything that you see within ADSelfService Plus can be customized granularly based on OUs and groups present in the Active Directory. You can also have universal password policies, which I will walk you through today, and the importance of picking a good password policy and how you can integrate with Have I Been Pawned. So things are changing a bit today. We are going to take a security perspective on password management. If you do have any questions, if you'd like me to talk about a particular module in detail, please make use of the Q&A tab to drop in your questions. That said, a very quick question from Tierra. Just to confirm, you stated that the recording of the entire series will be provided when completed. Yes, Tierra, that's right. The recording is happening live. If you have questions, I will answer them live, and the entire playlist will reach your inbox once we wrap up. Give us a couple of days to process the edits, and Monday should be a good time where you can find the entire playlist in your inbox. So we have 2 more sessions to go this particular week. Thank you so much for that. All right, so yes, let's quickly dive into my ADSelfService Plus infrastructure right here. Just to make it easy for all of you, I am going to pass on the demo link, the ADSelfService Plus product demo link, to all of you in the chat console. Please access the chat. You can log in and explore the application along with me. But what I've done here is, this is exactly where we left. I have different self-service policies, like we call it, within ADSelfService Plus, created on domain level, on OU level. I can do it based on groups as well. And based on different policies that I'm working with, I also have different authenticators that I've configured, right? So the process of enrollment is basically a user logging into the end user portal and signing up with these authenticators. So I'm going to start with a password reset process. We had enabled 2 factors of authentication for the administrative policy. We also set Microsoft Authenticator as mandatory. That's exactly where we are going to start today. I want to very quickly remind you that the user, Sharda, belonging to the admin policy, has her password expired, has their password expired. So that is where I am going to start. Let me show you this in action. I'm going to take an RDP. Keying in the old password. This is once again a password management that users come across. RDP connection cannot be successful if the user's account password is expired. All right, so users basically cannot log in and access their remote desktop connection. So let's say this is the case, and let's pretend that the user Sharda does not have access to her old password. What's going to happen in that particular case? I am going to go through a live password reset. I'm working with a Windows machine today, but this workflow is the same for Mac and Linux systems as well. And I'm going to do this right from the Gina CP console. So, all right, I click on reset password. I am going to key in my username, keying in the captcha. I click on continue, and my first factor of authentication will be triggered. In this particular case, it is the Microsoft Authenticator. I have set this particular authenticator as mandatory. I am going to go ahead by keying in the code that I see on my mobile device. yes, my first factor of authentication is true. I'm going to stick to app-based authentication for this particular process. So the second authenticator I'm picking is Google Authenticator. Once again, I've pre-configured the authenticators prior to today's session. Let me quickly access Sharda's code. I click on continue. Both Microsoft and Google Authenticator are app-based authentication, and they are time-based passcodes. Click on continue. Perfect. Two successful app-based time-based passcode authentication later, I'm then redirected to the reset password console. Once again, I want you to notice that I have the provision to reset password for my Office 365 account as well, but I'm not going to synchronize passwords because we need to revisit password synchronization tomorrow. So I'm going to leave it at that. But let me go ahead with a password reset for my AD account. I want you to notice that I've satisfied the custom granular password policy that you see on the screen. I will be talking about the custom granular password policy towards the end of today's session. I hit reset password, and just a couple of seconds for a successful password reset to take place. Stick with me while this is happening, and if you do have any questions, please drop in your questions in the Q&A tab. All right. Yes, my password reset has been successful. Perfect. Now I am going to go back to my remote desktop machine, try to establish a connection with the password that I just reset. I want to very quickly remind you that all my authenticators across different checkpoints has been pre-configured. So let's see what this particular workflow looks like. If my AD password reset has been successful while working remotely from the comfort of my home, right from my Gina CP screen, and successfully synchronized with my cache as well, I will be able to verify my identity right now, which is what has happened here as well. I'm redirected to the ADSelfService Plus console, and this is because I have enabled a secondary factor of authentication for the user Sharda belonging to the administrative self-service policy. This is for every single endpoint that we support. This includes Mac Linux systems as well. So I'm going to stick with security question and answer for this method of authentication. Once again, I can choose to trust this machine. We also have the browser trust option that is available. You can choose to customize it, remove it. It's available in the advanced setting. And on successful user identity verification with not one, but two factors of authentication, I will then have access to my Windows machine. Sincere apologies for the lag. I am working with a test infrastructure, and the server connection is taking a bit of a time. All right, but I have successfully logged in as Sharda with secondary factor authentication by verifying my identity. And this is purely from an end user's perspective, right? So this is how MFA looks when a user tries to log in to their particular endpoint. They can also choose to trust their machine. I'm going to very quickly go back to the ADSelfService Plus console right here, jump to MFA for endpoints. I'm still in the administrative policy. I want you to notice that I have enabled MFA one additional factor of authentication, and the only two authenticators I've given permission to is security question answer and Microsoft Authenticator. That's the exact workflow that we just saw. This workflow or this process of enabling different authenticators across different checkpoints is extremely straightforward. You simply have to check the box, pick the level of authentication, pick the authenticators that you'd like to enable from the checkbox right here. You can also choose to set certain authenticators as mandatory and simply save these settings and you are good to go. And this holds good for VPN, for your machine logon, for your OWA. And when I say machine logon, it includes Windows, Mac, and Linux systems. MFA is also extended to applications. And when I say MFA for applications, I'm talking about more than 100 pre-configured applications for which we support single sign-on, and any custom SAML application. Once again, a simple drop-down, pick the level of authentication, pick the authenticators, and you are good to go. All right, if you choose to trust the machine and it is later infected with ransomware, will that then enable the ransomware to spread, or is it safer not to allow to trust the machine option? All right, I'm going to answer this question in two parts. Thank you so much for bringing this up, Ruan. When it comes to ransomware attacks, if a particular machine is compromised because of a user identity verification failure, there is a possibility to spread within the network, but to choose to trust a particular machine, the user has to authenticate their identity for the very first time. So it's not a default option. The trust happens only when the authentication is successful. That is number one. Secondly, is it safe or not to allow to trust the machine is something that you have to take a call on as an administrator. My personal recommendation would definitely be to verify user identity with a secondary factor of authentication for every single logon attempt, though it is cumbersome, though it can be cumbersome. This is purely from a security perspective, because given the cybersecurity attack scope today, it's easy to compromise user identity. And yes, that's where authenticators play a very, very important role. And I'm also going to add to this by saying the ease in which user identity can be compromised is directly proportional to how bad your primary authenticator is, which is passwords in most cases. So I am going to talk to you about a custom granular password policy as well, something that's extremely important if you very heavily rely on your native Windows infrastructure. Ruan, stick with me through the session. I will be addressing the problem with the native Active Directory password policy and how you can ensure that you're not easily susceptible to, or how users in your organization are not easily susceptible to cyber attacks. Thank you so much. All right, so yes, moving on. What I've done is to make it easy for all of us. I have an OWA infrastructure that I have pre-configured. Just give me one quick second. Looks like I have closed the tab, but I have pre-configured OWA with another instance. So I had to get access to the Exchange server. I've done this for the policy self-service. There you go. I have MFA enabled for OWA, and this is between security question answers and AD security questions. Let me actually sign out. Looks like I'm logged in already. Sorry about that. Let me sign out of this particular user's account. Key in the first factor of authentication. All right, I am really, really sorry. Looks like my fellow colleague has temporarily disabled the connector, but I'm going to walk you through how this works. I'm borrowing an Exchange server because I'm working with test user accounts. So because of the security restrictions that my organization has, we have dummy accounts that we have created. I'm really sorry, I cannot show you how this works live, but what I had done is I had downloaded the OWA connector. So how MFA for OWA works is that there is an ADSelfService Plus connector which has to be installed in the Exchange server, which is physically available at my workplace. The primary authentication is naturally the Active Directory authentication. The secondary authentication is the ADSelfService Plus multi-factor authentication. So according to the workflow that I had planned for today, the first factor of authentication for the administrative user will be the native Windows Active Directory password, and the secondary factor of authentication will kick in provided the ADSelfService Plus connector has not been disabled. So that's why I was able to seamlessly log in to my OWA infrastructure. But what would traditionally happen is users are redirected to the ADSelfService Plus page, where the authenticators that have been picked for a particular domain, particular policy, or particular user groups will kick in, and users have to verify their identity before getting access to their Outlook web app. All right. The same workflow holds good for VPN as well. Let me very quickly show you that for the marketing policy. All right. So I believe this. All right. That's a completely different infrastructure. Perfect. So I had VPN logon enabled as well for an entirely different domain. I'm going to walk you through how this looks in terms of a video, simply because I'm already connected to my network through a secure VPN. So I cannot overlap by adding an additional VPN. And that is simply why I'm not able to show you this live. But when this was disabled, when the VPN that I've connected to today was disabled, I've taken a small clip of how you can configure VPN logon. So I have 2 factors of authentication enabled for VPN for the ADSSP.com domain, and I had enabled Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. So once the users belonging to this particular domain sign up with these authenticators, they actually need to verify their identity with either of these authenticators as a secondary factor of authentication before logging in and accessing their machine. So this is how it's going to look. This is the Open VPN profile. The first factor of authentication for this particular test user is their native Windows Active Directory password. And once the first factor of authentication is through, the Google Authenticator kicks in as the secondary factor of authentication. This was pre-configured in my colleague's mobile device. So we were able to enter the code and proceed with a secondary factor of authentication, right? Pretty self-explanatory, but yes, you need to key in the right response code as well. You cannot bypass authenticators listed right here. This is the Google Authenticator, if I remember it right. Perfect. So once the secondary factor of authentication is also done, which is Google Authenticator for this particular user, the Microsoft Authenticator kicks in. So in this particular case, what happens is the additional factors of authentication is 2. The authenticators that have been enabled are also just 2, which is Google and Microsoft authenticators, which basically means both authenticators become mandatory. And on successful user identity verification, there would then be a successful access to the VPN. I also want to very quickly show you that on an organizational level, we have secondary factor authentication enabled for us as well. So I make use of real authenticators, advanced authenticators, while I try to establish a VPN connection to my organization. And I make use of Face ID, I make use of time-based passcode, and I also make use of fingerprint to verify my identity before I can connect to my VPN. This is extremely important for users in your organization, especially remote users. And if you have users in your organization who are going to continue to work remotely or have a hybrid work culture, it's very, very important for you to ensure only the right person has right access to your network. And you can achieve that by increasing the number of authentication and safeguarding user identity. A very quick question that I'm going to take time to answer from Frank. Question about quick enrollment and users getting multiple emails after we've updated to the current build. Users that are added to MFA enrollment by quick enrollment are getting emailed every day, even after they were added the previous day. All right. This looks like a very, very specific case, Frank, but I will jump back to the ADSelfService Plus mail account that I've configured to show you. The usual trigger does not work that way. Once a user has completely enrolled with the authenticators that you have enabled, they will not receive an email requesting them to sign up with these authenticators. I want you to quickly take a look at the emails that I've received today, and I do not have any enrollment emails right here. All right, so this is unusual. I can take a look at it and help you out in your specific case. But 2 things that you need to keep a tab on is to check the enrolled users report and see if all the users in your organization have completely enrolled with the authenticators. And what we mean by complete enrollment is to enroll with all the authenticators that have been set as mandatory, all right? I'm experiencing a bit of a lag here today. I'm really sorry about that. I hope the connection is okay. And if not, please keep me informed by dropping a message in the chat console. But yes, when I click on the enroll users report, if the status is partially enrolled, then yes, the notification will be triggered. And that is when you need to jump to the configuration tab and take a look at your mandated authenticators. So when I click on advanced for a particular policy, when I go to multi-factor authentication and click on advanced for a particular policy, sorry about that. Click on MFA enrollment. There is an option to force users to enroll when they log into the end user portal, but more importantly, you are enforcing two of these authenticators for a particular policy, right? So it becomes important for users to sign up with all the authenticators that have been enforced. So make sure that you check this particular checkbox for the policy in which you see that multiple emails are getting triggered, and also the enrollment status of these users. All right, so you looked at the reports. Frank lets us know that he looked at the reports and the email is being triggered every single day. All right, I will connect with you personally and see what is wrong, but I would also like you to quickly check this particular tab and ensure that you've not mandated more than one authenticator for enrollment. Thank you so much. All right, if you do have more questions, please keep them coming. But jumping back to the agenda right here, enabling multi-factor authentication. This is a very interesting fact that I do want to pass on to every single one of you here today. Enabling multi-factor authentication for every single user in your organization or an organizational level across different endpoints is going to safeguard users in your organization from 99.9% account compromise based attacks. Basically, because with multi-factor authentication, it practically becomes extremely time consuming, thereby difficult to compromise user identity, and user account compromise or account compromise based attacks include everything from password based attack, brute force attack, man in the middle attack, malware, ransomware, and many other advanced attacking patterns as well. So make it a mandate for users in your organization to verify user identity with more than 2 factors of authentication. I would highly recommend 3 factors of authentication with biometrics involved across every single checkpoint and endpoint that you see right here. All right. It's easy for you to also make MFA seamless for end users by giving them the option to, enabling the browser or device trust option. Once again, it's completely up to you based on the security practices that you would like to follow. But if you do have privileged accounts, if you do have users who take RDP connections, users who, have administrative or technician level access to the network and within the organization, I would highly recommend you to not provide this particular option, but it's completely up to you. And you can also customize to prevent users from frequenting the MFA prompt. That said, I'm going to very quickly jump to talk about conditional access. All right, I'm going to quickly jump on to talk about conditional access once again. With remote working, with work from home and hybrid work culture, conditional access is extremely important. A very quick overview of how conditional access works. This is basically allowing the application to use its intelligence. This particular process is to allow the application to use its intelligence to decide whether a user logging in from a particular IP range, or static IP, or a particular network. Basically, it could be cafe Wi-Fi's, home Wi-Fi's, whatever it is, logging in from a particular network and a particular device. This could be platform specific, or it could be device specific, which includes computers, and logging in at a particular time and from a particular geolocation actually requires full access to the self-service features that you have provided to users in your organization. So not only do you give them the privilege to manage their own password self-service, to take care of their own logons, to securely log into their endpoints, and also single sign-on applications as well, you also keep a security check by introducing conditional access right here. I am going to walk you through a very quick example. I have a CA rule up and running where I have not restricted based on IP addresses. I can choose to do this, but since I have users working from different parts of the country, different IP ranges, I am going to do a device-based restriction where when users log in from a particular computer and platform and set the business hours to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday, it could vary based on the location that you check in from, and setting the geolocation to India, I have simply configured the criteria, the and or not criteria can be used, but I've simply enforced an and criteria where the device, business, and geolocation needs to be kept a tab on. I have to update this particular rule. I can create multiple rules. I have different rules based on demographics right here. But once again, I want to very quickly remind you that for the workshop series that I'm working with, I'm literally working with one particular device. I'm definitely working off business hours. It's 10 p.m. here in India right now. So I've not enforced this for the user account or machine that I'm working with today. But in reality, I can choose to pick the CA rule that I'm working with, assign it to the administrative policy, which is the machine that I'm working with today, the user that I've logged into. And I can also choose to allow or restrict NTLM single sign-on as well as the ADSelfService Plus portal access. Hit save, and that is all you need to do to configure conditional access. You can choose to map it to different policies as well. All right, and you are good to go. When a user logs in or when there is a malicious logon attempt, based on the risk factors, the user's self-service action will simply be blocked or denied. Whereas if the risk factor is measurable, if there needs increased MFA or limited access, the application will decide based on the risk factor and then provide access accordingly. So not only are you increasing user identity security with multi-factor authentication, you can also securely provide access to self-service actions that ADSelfService Plus gives you the privilege of, while doing it securely by introducing conditional access. All right, extremely simple, straightforward to configure. If you do have any questions or if you run into issues while setting this up, please write to me and I will help you set it up for your entire organization. But yes, moving on, I am going to talk about the password policy. It's also a question that I received today. And it's important to have a better password policy in place. I'll tell you why. The native Windows Active Directory password policy that many organizations still work with is more than 2 decades old. And I finally talk about how the native Windows Active Directory password policy is as old as me, all right? But unfortunately, the cybersecurity space is extremely fragile, extremely vulnerable given the circumstances right now, given the increase in cybersecurity attacks, increase in application compromise, malware and ransomware that's doing the rounds, remote vulnerabilities being exploited, VPNs being exploited. It's extremely important to upgrade your custom granular password policy. This brings me to a very important question that I have for every single one of you here today. Do you work with your native Active Directory? If yes, do you have an OU or group-based custom granular password policy in place? This question is also extended to existing customers of ADSelfService Plus. Have you upgraded your native Windows Active Directory password policy? Please let me know. Drop in your messages in the chat console. But talking about password policy, I have one up and running. This password policy is not ideal. I will walk you through why it's not ideal in just a couple of seconds. But what I've done here is bombarded character restrictions. I I can choose to disallow characters from the username, the old password, and restrict the old password itself. So I've taken care of incremental passwords. I've taken care of password history. I can also choose to include custom custom patterns that are prevalent in my organization, including the organization name, department names, days of a week, months of a calendar. I can disallow the entire dictionary. These are predictable attacking patterns when it comes to brute force attack and many other password pattern-based attacks. I can choose to increase length. I've set a minimum password length of 8, and I would highly recommend anything above 13, all right? But that said, the reason why I said this is not an ideal password policy is because it is not necessary to bombard users with all the complexity rules that you see on the screen, right? It becomes cumbersome to set a password that meets all the complexity rules while also having a password that is easy to remember and something that does not cause fatigue. Password fatigue is a real thing. You can choose to allow users to satisfy a minimum of the above complexity rules. But what's even more interesting is the advanced password policy rules will be enforced nevertheless. You can also choose to override all the complexity rules provided the password length is longer than 15, 20, 25 characters. And this is where passphrases comes into picture. I have deliberately not picked these two options, but I'm going to walk you through why it's important to work with advanced password complexity rules like the ones that you see on the screen. I also have chosen to display this across the reset password and change password pages, including the Gina CP console. This is for an administrative user. So I am going to jump back to my Gina CP screen, click on the change password console. All right. I am going to enter my username right here, key in the password that we reset today, and given a password that looks like it has met all the complexity rules, right? I'm going to show you what this is. It's the infamous password at 123. Even if I choose to increase the complexity with special characters and numeral, it is still not an acceptable password simply because it has a predictable pattern, it has a dictionary word, and it is a bad password. So a good password policy is not just about checking multiple boxes with increased complexity. It's about a good length, a length that is comfortable and not easy to compromise. A password that takes into account password entropy, which is basically the susceptibility factor of a particular password from being compromised. And more importantly, a password that allows users to be aware of the complexity rules they need to meet, a password policy that helps users be aware of the password complexity rules that they need to meet, and more importantly, letting them know why their password is not good enough by displaying why a particular password has been rejected. And that is what the ADSelfService Plus password policy enforcer offers. You can also choose to customize this differently for different user groups. All right, you can choose to not enable the custom granular password policy as well. But if you ask me, I would highly, highly recommend you to work with advanced password policies like patterns, dictionary words, incremental passwords, password history, increasing password length to 13 and above, enforcing passphrases, encouraging users to work with passphrases. Once again, the added advantage is this particular password policy is also enforced across the Gina CP and the ADUC console. So when I try to perform a reset password operation for the administrative user as an administrator, I click on OK. And I want you to notice that this particular password has been rejected. All right, it's a clear indicator that my password has been rejected. And this is because the custom granular password policy that we've enforced from within ADSelfService Plus is mandated across the ADUC password reset console as well, thanks to the password sync agent. Pretty straightforward, extremely easy to configure. I would highly, highly recommend you to enable a custom granular password policy that does not allow users' passwords from being easily susceptible to compromise. And once again, let me very quickly insist on having a better password policy in place, because the problem is not with passwords being susceptible to cybersecurity attacks, passwords being weak. The problem is with a password policy that is not good enough, a password policy that has not seen any drastic change in over 2 decades, and a password policy that needs an upgrade, all right? And if you're wondering how the ADSelfService Plus custom granular password policy works, it is an added layer to the native Windows Active Directory password policy. So if you do have password custom fine-grained password policy or GPO-based changes that you have enforced, that will also be enforced along with the native Windows, the custom granular password policy that you have enforced from within ADSelfService Plus. I also want to quickly jump to the administrative tab, jump to product settings, click on integration settings, and show you that I have enabled an integration with Have I Been Pawned, which basically means with the help of the Have I Been Pawned API service, I can disallow users who perform password resets and change password operation in ADSelfService Plus in their Gina CP console to not set any password that has already been compromised, that has been part of leaked databases, weak password patterns that are listed in the compromised password database. All right, so this is great, especially if you'd want to simply disallow users from setting weak patterns and predictable patterns or compromised passwords as their password. And this is upgraded real time, since it is an independent API, independent application, a third-party application. It is pretty much up to date with all the compromised passwords that have made it out, because of cybersecurity attacks. So highly, highly recommend this. I already have the integration up and running. It's a simple click box, and that is all you need to do to set it up on an organization level. So once again, a very quick overview of all that we've seen so far. We have, I have walked you through how you can enable MFA for your password self-service process, for your endpoints, which includes your Windows, Mac, and Linux systems, your OWA, your VPN, how easy it is to enable MFA for the ADSelfService Plus login as well as cloud applications, how you can customize different authenticators for different policies, based on OUs and groups present in Active Directory, the importance of conditional access, and how you can allow the application to use its intelligence to determine the level of authentication that we require, or to allow or restrict access to users based on risk factors, and how you can also customize a granular password policy that is not only limited to Active Directory, but is universal. That said, I am going to talk about how MFA works for cloud applications tomorrow, because we will be talking about customizing access to single sign-on applications, and also talk about password synchronization. So I will be talking about how the custom granular password policy is also enforced in your Microsoft 365 infrastructure as well, and many other applications that you'd like to enable password synchronization for. So that part of this workshop will be continued tomorrow once I walk you through how you can set up single sign-on and password synchronization. But that said, before we wrap up the session for the day, I do want to definitely walk you through how it's important to once again keep a tab on every single action that happens in the end user's console. So I'm going to jump back to the reports tab, clicking the audit reports. I click on the reset password audit report right here. And I want you to notice that we have had a successful password reset today. I'm also going to click the user attempt audit report, walk you through the couple of attempts that we've made today. All right. I did have a successful OWA logon. I just want to show you this. This was not a long time ago. But unfortunately, my dear friend and colleague has chosen to disable the ADSelfService Plus connector at a wrong time. And I'm sorry I couldn't show you this, but I will make sure that I inform him and if possible, make it a part of tomorrow's session. All right, I did have a successful OWA MFA login, just for your reference, just a couple of hours back. All right. But yes, that said, I'm also going to walk you through the enrolled users report today to show you that a couple of user accounts are in the enrolled status. All right, this is how you can keep track of users' enrollment statuses. You can also look at the soon to expire password users report. And I am going to change the day to 15, click on generate, and the user Sharda's name should pop up. Just a couple of seconds for this to load. Sorry about the lag. If you do have any questions in the meantime, please keep them coming. All right, I'm going to wait for that particular report to load. And yes, a very quick recap in the meantime. This particular session is more around protecting user identity with multi-factor authentication for all your endpoints and checkpoints in which users log in and access or perform self-service actions. So this includes endpoint logons, VPN logons, OWA, RDP, and also cloud applications. I will be talking about cloud applications. I'll walk you through the cloud application MFA tomorrow. You can also make multi-factor authentication seamless by enabling browser and device trust. You can enable conditional access to, bring in context, such as, talk about risk factors such as IP address, device, geolocation, business hours. You can choose to enforce a universal password policy. This can be done based on groups and OUs present in your Active Directory on an enterprise level. This is also extended to enterprise applications and allow users to pick better passwords by displaying the password policy. You can also choose to integrate with Have I Been Pawned as well. That said, if you do have more questions, please keep them coming. But I am going to log in as an end user. Let me quickly open an Incorp tab. Log in as an end user before I wrap up the session for today. I am going to log in as the user Sharada. And yes, I'm trying to access my ADSelfService Plus console. I have one quick question that I'm going to take in the meantime. Do I have any suggestions for giving users a password generator app or service? In all honesty, that is not something that I would recommend, Tom. But yes, we do have the provision within ADSelfService Plus as well. We do have the provision to, generate random passwords with AD Manager Plus as well. But that is a module that I slightly avoid because that is not something that I recommend at all. I would highly, highly urge you to allow users to take care of their own password management by enabling self-service for these users. So yes, I do not have any suggestions for a password generator app at the moment. Sorry about that. Thank you. All right, let me log in as Sharada. This is to quickly walk you through how MFA looks in the ADSelfService Plus console, end user console. I'm going to log in as Sharada because this particular user belongs to the admin policy and I've enabled all permissions, all self-service permissions to this particular user. So on successful user identity verification with the first factor of authentication, I then have to go through wait, security question answers. I click on continue. If the answer to my security questions are right, I will then be redirected to the ADSelfService Plus. Pardon me, I'm sorry about that. The ADSelfService Plus end user portal, and I have enabled MFA for the portal as well. I can choose to self-update personal information securely from this particular portal. I can also choose to edit the self-update layout and selectively give access to different layouts. I want you to notice that I have the provision to change passwords right here from within the console. But what I did want to insist on was the enrollment part of it. when users receive the enrollment notification, they will have to sign up with the enrolled, the authenticators that have been enabled for them. If you notice, I have not signed up with fingerprint or face ID because this is not a mandatory authenticator for this particular user or user group. But if a particular authenticator is mandatory, they would be, and is enforced, they would be forced to sign up with those authenticators as soon as they log into the self-service portal. So for this particular user, I believe security question answer and Microsoft Authenticator has been set as mandatory. And I have signed up with both of these authenticators, manually signed up with email verification and Google Authenticator as well. Just to make it easy, I've chosen to not sign up with biometrics, but yes, you can allow users to log in to ADSelfService Plus to sign up with different authenticators that you have enabled for different user groups. I also have mail group subscription option available and access to single sign-on applications, but come back tomorrow where I walk you through the configuration steps before I show you how single sign-on works. And in the soon to expire, pardon me, in the soon to expire password users report, I want you to notice that the password reset for Adam and Sharda was carried out today, which simply means they've been moved from the password expired user report and they have 15 days to password expiry. All these password changes were made today. All right, one yesterday, but the other two were made today. All right, with that, I am going to quickly wrap up the session for the day. If you do have any questions, please keep them coming. I'm also dropping in a quick poll for you to answer. If you are looking at any of these solutions listed on your screen, please do take a couple of seconds to answer the poll by picking the options that you see. And if you'd like a product specialist like me to walk you through a personalized one-on-one evaluation, a free product evaluation, please do let us know by dropping in your answer in the poll that you see. We can also help you troubleshoot issues, customize the application to meet your organization's need, help you set it up for users in your organization. And this includes not just, this poll is not just for ADSelfService Plus, it can be extended to all the applications under the IAM and IT security umbrella. So please do take a couple of seconds to answer the poll that you see on the screen. In the meantime, if you do have questions, please keep them coming. That said, I want to very quickly remind you that we will be joining back again tomorrow and at the same time where I will walk you through the importance of going beyond Active Directory when it comes to user identity security, when it comes to password management, wherein I will step in to talk about the importance of integrating with different applications and how you will be able to enable seamless password management for different on-premises and cloud-based applications with password synchronization, and also walk you through how you can enable single sign-on access for any custom SAML application that you have in your organization. So looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And yes, with that, I am going to quickly wrap up the session for the day and take time to answer questions offline.